Kenya's electricity utility, Kenya Power, will begin daily power cuts starting as of Wednesday, July 27th. It will be for an unspecified period. The company has blamed insufficient water at power dams and a decline in fuel-based power supply. Joining us now on the line from Nakuru in Kenya is Jas Bedi, who's chairperson of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Thank you very much, Jas Bedi, for your time. Already talks of electricity rationing to begin this Wednesday. Targeted areas, industrial zones. What does business have to say about this?
Well, actually, it's a series of events that we've gone through in the recent past. We've had high commodity prices, we've had the exchange rate moving against us, and now we're going to have power rationing starting on Wednesday. I mean, it's going to increase the cost of doing business even further because the productive sector, and when you're not having power for 3 or 4 hours, and we don't know yet what the plan is and which areas are going to be affected, but it just makes your costs go high because your unit cost of production goes high. You've got spending costs, which you have to bear. You've got labor rates that you have to pay, but that means that it's going to have an additional effect on inflation in this country. As it is, we're battling with inflation at this point in time.
Does business have contingency measures in general? Because authorities could argue that for the last 6-7 months, you've known of the drought situation. You've known of the very severe and dire consequences of dams drying up and not being able to pump electricity through hydroelectricity mechanisms, if that's what one could say. So effectively, this is something you should have anticipated.
Well, you see, it's not the first time it's happening in Kenya. It's happened in the past, and it's like a sine wave. It comes every couple of years. And most factories would have standby generators, but the cost to generate power with no standby generator is far higher. So what I'm talking about is that inflation kicks in because at the end of the day, you end up passing on that extra cost to the consumer on products that you manufacture. And there's a lot of rain in parts of the country. But we seem to have this constant problem in Kenya, and unfortunately, we're not getting a permanent solution because this is, for the last 15 years, I've known it to come every couple of years. And it's a problem that Kenya needs to address. The Kenya generating company needs to look at alternative measures, and I know that they're drilling green energy with the geysers and the geothermal energy that they're trying to get out of the Rift Valley zone, and they're talking about 7,000 megawatts. But that's, at this point in time, it's not going to be realized until the next few years. So we have current shortages, and last time this happened, they actually carved out the industrial sector and said, yes, let the industrial sector not suffer, because if the productive sector suffers, the general economy will suffer, and it will create an inflationary trend. And this time around, they've said it's also going to be in industrial zones, which is very worrying at this point in time.
I mean, obviously, you're talking about how the costs will be passed on to consumers and we'll see inflation rise, prices rise. What about bottom lines for companies? Because not only is it the situation now of power rationing, it's the cost of imports, because a lot of Kenyan manufacturers rely on imported goods, and you've had a shilling that's weakened. So when you add all of these components together, exactly what are company earnings going to look like come the end of the year?
Well, company earnings are never going to be affected because we can already see slowing down of the demand. The demand patterns are going down primarily because of the costs that you just mentioned, shilling which is weakening, commodity prices that are on the hike, power not being there. So it's going to have an impact on the demand patterns, and we've already seen a slowing down on manufactured goods in Kenya, and this will only add on to this whole problem that we're facing. Yes, it's going to have a grave impact on the bottom line, because as the demand goes down, your sales go down, your bottom line goes down, and everything goes down. It's a spiral effect.
Let's talk about government and business working together here. Increasingly, we're seeing in major economies co-generation agreements between big industrial players and the power utility. How, you know, for instance, a company like Mumias can feed electricity back into the grid through ethanol initiatives and other such things. I mean, how much of a partnership is there between Kenyan industry and Kenyan government when it comes to co-generation agreements and finding just lasting solutions?
Well, a lot of big companies are looking at that at this point in time. They're all looking at some form of generation so that the reliance on the grid is less and they can sell the difference to the grid. And there's some companies that would actually, private players would actually love to have a PPP, a public-private partnership with the government, and set up huge power plants. But the problem is the Kenyan government is unwilling at this point in time to give sovereign guarantees on offtake. And that's where there's a big debate between the private sector and the public sector, that if we can't get a sovereign guarantee, we're not going to get the funding options in place, and it'll be difficult to finance those projects. And we are talking to government at this point in time, and that, listen, they need to look at it slightly differently, because we have a crisis that's looming, and maybe sovereign guarantees is the way forward. And so that's all at this point in time under discussion, and the private sector is taking it up quite seriously with government, that we can't carry on in this type of scenario.